We have found a surprising consistency in the wave of scandals that have hit top-of-the-ticket big-name Republican candidates in the last few days. It is an odd but noticeable commonality. Almost every politician out there preaches about the idea of personal responsibility, right? It's time to bring personal responsibility back to America. Time to bring personal responsibility back to Washington. That term, personal responsibility, is a focus group-approved tagline for all sorts of politicians. But it's the Republican Party that's really essentially tried to make personal responsibility its brand of late.
I believe this nation is on the cusp of welcoming in a period of personal responsibility, a responsibility era. An era which says each of us are responsible for the decisions we make in life.
Pure, unadulterated, generic politics right there. President Bush speaking to a Republican Party gathering in 2002. 8 years later, the Republican Party still trying to claim that whole personal responsibility thing as their party's brand.
Leaders overreach because the rules allow them to. Legislators duck their responsibilities because the rules help them to. There's no accountability. There are no consequences.
No accountability, no consequences. It's time for some personal responsibility. Well, personal responsibility as a Republican brand, it's in a run for its life right now. Republican Meg Whitman in California, for example. Why is Meg Whitman in trouble right now? Because a big part of her political platform, what she has been campaigning on for months now, is her plan to crack down on illegal immigrants. Specifically, workplaces suspected of employing undocumented workers. Any employer employing an illegal immigrant will be slapped with fines and will have their business licenses suspended under a Meg Whitman administration. Meg Whitman inveighing against people who employ illegal immigrants. That got sort of awkward this week when an illegal immigrant who Meg Whitman employed for 9 years as her housekeeper came out to say, not only did Meg Whitman treat me poorly as an employee, but she knew I was here in the country illegally. Ms. Whitman's response to that allegation was to deny it. She said she didn't know the woman was an illegal immigrant. Cue the high-priced lawyer unveiling the giant blow-up of the letter from the federal government that warned Meg Whitman that her maid appeared to be undocumented, complete with Meg Whitman's husband's signature on it.
Do you have any reason to believe that that is not your husband's signature?
You know, I haven't seen it, but I suspect it probably is his signature, and I suspect, what he said is he doesn't remember ever receiving this letter.
I suspect what he doesn't remember. Who, me? Couldn't be. Blame my husband. I mean, it was his handwriting on that letter, not mine. In fact, I barely even know the guy, to be honest with you. I'm sorry, I've got to go. Then there's Republican Senate candidate Christine O'Donnell of Delaware. Ms. O'Donnell also attempted the who, me defense this week after reporters started turning up some funny inconsistencies in her record. Now here's Christine O'Donnell's profile on the website LinkedIn. In that profile, under the heading Education, Ms. O'Donnell claims to have attended the University of Oxford in England. See, it's right there, University of Oxford. Christine O'Donnell claims to have studied postmodernism in the new millennium at Oxford. The problem, as Greg Sargent at the Washington Post first reported this week, quote, it turns out that was just a course conducted by an institution known as the Phoenix Institute, which merely rented space at Oxford. Instead of just acknowledging the exaggeration, maybe apologizing, Christine O'Donnell, through a Republican PR company, decided to double down on this. She released this statement, quote, there have been reports that I have released false information on a LinkedIn profile under my name. This is categorically untrue. I never established a LinkedIn profile or authorized anyone to do so on my behalf. Who, me? Couldn't be me. Somebody else must have written that bio page without my knowledge, which is a neat excuse, except for the fact that the claim in question here, the I attended Oxford claim, did not just appear on Christine O'Donnell's LinkedIn profile. It also turned up on her profile page at another online resume sharing thingy. That one even included a special note that all of the information there was user verified. The I attended Oxford thing also appeared on a resume that Christine O'Donnell submitted to a think tank called the Claremont Institute back in 2002. Who, me? I'm not responsible for any of those either, I promise. Sorry, I've got to go. The Who Me defense also put on full display this week in Connecticut. Republican Linda McMahon, a former executive with World Wrestling Entertainment, is now vying to become that state's next U.S. Senator. Ms. McMahon faced this question at a Tea Party event in Waterbury, Connecticut.
Linda, you have, through your company, made many contributions to special interests, put forward to try to get your point of view supported. Haven't you made over $1 million in contributions and lobbying efforts to the Congress?
Okay, think. I've railed against special interests and lobbying in this campaign. How do I answer this question?
Haven't you made over $1 million in contributions and lobbying efforts to the Congress?
In terms of lobbying dollars in Washington, I've not spent lobbying dollars in Washington.
Who, me? I never lobbied Congress. You must have me mistaken with somebody else. The problem, as Roll Call newspaper revealed today, quote, McMahon video contradicts lobbying record. Between 2001 and 2008, McMahon's company paid at least $680,000 to lobby Congress and federal agencies over such issues as the defense authorization bills of 02 and 03. In 07 and 08, the WWE paid $340,000 to Washington lobbying firm K&L Gates to help the company navigate a congressional investigation of steroid use in sports.
In terms of lobbying dollars in Washington, I've not spent lobbying dollars in Washington.
Dollars? We think of them more as euros. The Who Me defense is also being employed in probably the saddest of all these scandals right now, the one currently surrounding Republican Senate candidate Joe Miller of Alaska. Mr. Miller took a trip to D.C. this week, at which point the following messages appeared in succession on his Twitter account. Think I'll do some house hunting while I'm in D.C. Guess I should pick out some office furniture as well while in D.C. Then there's the matter of a name plaque for the door. And finally, my sincere appreciation for the warm welcome, including from future colleagues in D.C. After one of Joe Miller's opponents whacked him for that drape-measuring bit of hubris, all of those tweets magically disappeared from Mr. Miller's Twitter account. Not only did they disappear, Mr. Miller's campaign spokesman then blamed the tweets on a volunteer who will no longer have access to the account. I didn't write those tweets. Who, me? Must have been some volunteer. Now, it may very well have been a rogue Miller volunteer who's been secretly tweeting as if he is Joe Miller. If so, maybe Rick Sanchez can retroactively draft that same volunteer to say he did anti-Semitic radio interviews for him. But at this point, it sort of seems like all of these top-tier Republican candidates are getting the same advice on these things. Blame someone else. I mean, the Republican Party's invested a lot in all of these races. Is there somebody at Republican headquarters or some political shop steering all these campaigns, telling them all to say, don't blame me, blame a staffer? Is that the advice they're all getting? It is essentially the strategy they're all following. Maybe there's a puppet master. Maybe they're all just learning from the master, though.
I believe this nation is on the cusp of welcoming in a period of personal responsibility, a responsibility era. An era which says each of us are responsible for the decisions we make in life.
You've always said there's no do-overs as president, if you had one.
I don't know. The biggest regret of all the presidency has to have been the intelligence failure in Iraq. A lot of people put their reputations on the line, and that's not a do-over. But I wish the intelligence had been different, I guess.
Suppose Senator John Doe puts forth a constitutional amendment that would outlaw abortion, even in cases of rape or incest, and he asked you to attend the announcement and support him in that. Would you do it?
I would. Yes, a proposal like that, I would stand by it.
Let's be completely clear about the facts here. There is no place in the world and no time in history where restricting women's reproductive rights makes a people or a nation more free or more equal. These extreme positions on abortion are, without any question, a war on American girls and women, and the fact that there are women who are both complicit and participatory in it is really neither surprising nor unprecedented. It has always been true, and it is incredibly important that we recognize that despite the fact that we can be very proud of these women and as politicians, that the question is, how do women as citizens fare on the other side of them either being elected or not elected?